Here's the question. My transgender daughter is an adult who identifies as a male. She's just told my wife and I that she won't have a relationship with us unless we call her by a man's name and refer to her as him. Should we? Well, my short answer is no, I see no reason why you should. That seems to be some sort of a relational blackmail that's happening there. But let me be quick to say, not every Christian author or leader will agree with me. There are many people who've written on this subject and who speak on this subject who say we ought to use what they call pronoun hospitality, which basically means we should call people whatever they wish to be called as a show of respect and hospitality. And I respect that. I appreciate the attitude behind that. I also respectfully disagree with it. With that in mind, I guess it harkens back to what Paul told the Romans in Romans 14, let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. When something isn't just clearly spelled out in Scripture, look at the biblical principles and then prayerfully land on a position that you are fully persuaded of. Let me tell you what I'm fully persuaded of. And by the way, let me say that being fully persuaded does not mean being simplistic. This is not such a simple issue. There are a lot of emotions involved, and so just holding a position doesn't mean that it's easy to hold it or easy to express it. It can be very hard. It requires a lot of wisdom, a lot of prayer, and a lot of sensitivity. Having said all that, let me start with my first point. I believe it is simply inaccurate to call a female a male. I believe it's simply inaccurate. I believe that if someone is something, and they feel they are something else, they do have a problem. But the problem is what they feel, not what they are. Thereby, I do not believe we help people by aligning ourselves with the problem, which is their feeling, and go along with the denial of what really is. It is inaccurate to say that our feelings dictate our sex. They don't, no matter how strongly I might feel that I am a woman. If I die, my DNA 50, 70, 200 years from now would testify to the fact that no, I was a male, no matter how I identified myself. So first of all, I believe it's simply inaccurate to adopt a pronoun which does not apply to the person I'm addressing. Secondly, I believe that calling a female a male is not only inaccurate, it's insulting. It's insulting to the God who created that person a female. Not only inaccurate, but also insulting. Let me explain that. This is where this, I believe, becomes a theological issue. God told Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. I had a choice. I made my choice. I foreknew you and foreordained you to be who and what you are. That's why David said in Psalm 139, verses 13 and 14, you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. David is saying, I align myself with what you made me to be, and I celebrate that. Now, Paul posed an interesting rhetorical question to the Romans 9:20, when he said, shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why have you made me thus? No, O man, Paul said, who are you to reply against God? And I believe that to say to God, you made a mistake, is to indeed reply against God. Let me veer off for a moment if I could. Back in New Testament times, when John wrote his letters and when Paul wrote to the Colossians, they referenced a heresy called Gnosticism, which is a heresy which exists to this day, which basically asserts that the God who created us was quite imperfect. According to Gnostics, that God is called the demiurge. And the demiurge was an imperfect being who created us imperfectly because he himself is somewhat flawed. Because of that, our bodies are not as sacred as we might think they are. And we come to perfect knowledge then through our own intuitive knowledge, which is called gnosis, Gnosis. Through gnosis, we come to intuit what is really true. And in fact, Gnosticism discourages the idea that knowledge is gained only by what is observable and verifiable. It's largely gained in a divine way through what we intuit. Thereby, if I intuit something, it becomes true. Now, part of the heresy of Gnosticism is it usurps divine authority by saying, I have the right to declare what is and to call into existence things which are not. For all of those reasons, I take very seriously Isaiah's admonition, Isaiah 45:9, woe to him who strives with his maker. I also believe it is insincere to say to somebody something you simply don't believe. That to me becomes quite patronizing. If I do not believe you are a male and I call you a male just to appease you, I am basically saying our relationship requires me to say things that I don't believe in. Now, does that mean when you talk to your daughter, you want to go out of your way to say, hi, daughter, hi, girl, I just want to reiterate that you're a female? No, of course not. You don't want to be a jerk about this. No. I mean, there are ways that you can speak to someone in the neutral sense and meet them halfway by saying, look, I'm not going to refer to you as something I don't believe you are, but I am going to meet you halfway by not addressing you in any particular gender pronoun. We'll just have a conversation, which people are capable of doing. That is one way you can meet someone halfway on this. Because God will not always call us to impose a truth. Every time I'm with somebody who I think is in error, I'm not called to impose the truth by saying, hi, I just want to tell you that relationship you're in is wrong. That thing you're doing is wrong. You shouldn't do that. We're not always called to impose a truth, but God will never, never call us to participate in a lie. God will not call us to always impose the truth, but he will never call us to participate in a lie. So, your daughter seems to be not only dealing with identity, but probably with some indoctrination as well. The times we're in, people are largely indoctrinated to believe that if people will not comply with them, they are therefore being hated. There's no room for dissent. Well, here you want to try to appeal to reason. In 4 basic ways you want to try to reason with your daughter. Number 1, I would not ask you to do something which violated your conscience. I don't ask you to do things you don't believe in. I don't pressure you to say things you don't believe. So please don't ask me to do something which would violate my conscience. That's my second point. I want to reason with you. Look at the way I treat you. I don't try to force you to do something you don't believe in. So would you please not try to force me to do something I don't believe in? I will not, third point, impose a pronoun or a name on you. And number 4, I will not give you ultimatums, okay? I'm not sitting here saying to you, hey, because I'm a Christian, I believe God created you female, so you better call yourself by a female name and you better tell me you identify as female. I'm not forcing you to do that. Why would you try to force me? Aren't we both big enough to be adult about this and to meet each other halfway? And yeah, sometimes, oftentimes, that reasonable approach will work. Many transgender people who we may not agree with, who we don't agree with actually, are still reasonable people, people of goodwill. And yes, they will be willing to meet you halfway on that issue. And sometimes not. And when sometimes not happens, it's very, very hard. But if you allow yourself to be emotionally held hostage by a demand like that, you are basically saying to this person, I will say things I don't believe just for the sake of appeasing you. Well, on that point, I think we ought to take a cue from Peter and John when they told the religious leaders who told them, hey, you may say this, but you may not say that. Sorry, guys. We ought to obey God rather than man. Now, if you want to pursue this more, I did write an article for the Christian Research Journal called The Transsexual Dilemma, The Transsexual Dilemma by Joe Dallas. You can find the link for that on the content description page that goes along with this video. Also, you can check out my book, Christians in a Cancel Culture, Christians in a Cancel Culture through Harvest House Publishing. Also, the link to that appears on the description page. And that will also talk to you about how to have dialogue with people on tricky issues, including the transgender issue. If this is something you'd like to talk with me about personally, I'd be glad to make an appointment with you. Just go to joedallas.com, go to the Counseling Services section. That'll show you how to connect with me. And if you'd like to support this ministry with your gift so we can go on providing free content, just go to joedallas.com/giving, and that'll show you how your gift can partner with us in this work. Well, I'm Joe, and this is the short answer. I hope it's been helpful to you. God bless.